then we'll process. How are you doing, Colleen?
Hi, Jeanie. I'm okay. I need some support. That's why I'm calling. But but I'm okay. I sent you an email this morning, but basically what it was put into to an earlier show. I think it was from the 4th earlier this week. And at the end towards the end of it, somewhere, I had a question percolating. So I started writing in my notebook, trying to formulate the email I wanted to send you, and it turned into like 4 pages. So then what I did was I just sent you kind of saying, hey, I think I'm going to call in because this seems to be something, it's not a question, it's a situation I need to dig into, and I really need some support because I'm really in the weeds here. So yeah, I have this kind of written out, and I just wondered if maybe I can read what I have and then perhaps see what happens from there.
Sure. Let me double check with Michael and see if he's having trouble getting on.
Yeah.
And yeah, hold on one second. Okay, he's getting on.
Just so you know, post pages is there too.
Yeah, we had been out doing errands this morning, and I just opened up your email, and yeah, it is long. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I just went.
Yeah. So, give him just a minute.
And I mean, there's a lot of stuff, so I get it. If I did try and space out some time Monday too, if maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know if everything's going to be answered.
Sure, we actually had said that we were going to start making Mondays as a worksheet day, but we haven't had people call in to do a worksheet. So, yeah, we can start it today, and then if we don't get finished, we'll complete it on Monday. But, yeah, let's offer you some support.
There's going to be a bunch of worksheets, and it kind of already has been a bunch of worksheets, which is why I'm writing in, or why I'm asking, because I'm in the middle of it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that happens often when you're doing a worksheet. It kind of becomes what we call a hydra, and it just expands out, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole ton of worksheets. That's why we always say, if you're writing it out, then make yourself notes of other things that come up. And, we always say, too, that if, you have different emotions or different thoughts, they will all have different goals. And so, yeah, it definitely turns into multiple worksheets. So Michael's with us. I'm first going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. We get to play again for another day. And tell me about our caller, Jean.
Okay, this is Colleen, and she said that she started sending an email, and it was so long and just turned into multiple worksheets, and so she said coming up on the weekend, she needed some help navigating it, and that if we don't finish today, we could do it on Monday. So, Colleen, you are on, and Michael's on. Go for it.
Awesome, Colleen. Let's go for it.
Hi, Michael. All right. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of read what I have and then maybe go from there and see what your thoughts are. Is that okay?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I'm confused about perception. Is all negative perception a hallucination, or only that which I have fear or hostility about? Like, my reality is that my younger brother, who I presently work for, is arrogant, dismissive, and even combative whenever I express innocence.
Okay, let's start off with that first question. So, the question about perception. That's a really, that's a giant question in today's world where everybody believes that everything that's going on in their minds that's painful is somebody else's fault. The whole world of perception, period, is all 100% hallucination. And when I say hallucination, I don't mean that it's not accurate about what happened. I don't mean that there's no truth in it. What I mean by hallucination is that every perceptual construct of the mind is nothing more than a hologram, a construct of the mind, made up by the mind, made out of this multi-generational database that we have called the mind. And it exists in only one place, and that is between our ears. It may be, or components of it may or may not be true about what happened in the world. But the one thing we can always rely on 100% is that the constructs of our mind are always true about what's in our mind. And if it's content that we'd rather not live with, we need to begin a conversation with ourselves about that content and start to use the tools to delete the pained content so we're finished with it. Does that make sense to your question?
It does. It does. Kind of what I go on about is that there is a certain situation that kind of reoccurs or has been reoccurring. At this point, I'm almost looking at it.
Can I break in again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me for doing that, but what I'd like to do is support you 100%, and that means that wherever your mental mind constructs are off base, that you stop it as quickly as possible and catch your mind at its trick. So my offering is, when you say, remember our definition of denial. When I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's inside of me, I'm in denial. When I'm in denial, when I say to my mind, this is not a product of what's going on inside of us, it's a product of what's happening out there, that's the definition of denial, then what my mind is required to do is to hide the truth from me that is at the root of my pain. So now that I've hidden from the truth, I've created a totally unnatural condition in my mind called an unconscious, a part of me that I'm out of touch with. So when I say this situation makes me, they make me, he makes me, she makes me, I'm in denial, and I'm hiding the part of my mind that I need to heal. And the part of my mind that I'm hiding from myself at any given moment is usually the part that has called this person in to do whatever they do because I'm in need of healing. When I shift, words tell my mind how to structure my reality. When I shift my words from, I'm upset because of this, to this situation brought upset up in me, now I've opened a pathway to touch into what I've hidden from myself. And what I've hidden from myself is probably patterned after what generation after generation after generation my bloodline have hidden from themselves. So the objective here is to come into deeper and deeper contact with truth, which means eliminate the unconscious mind. Now, it's a pretty big task because, if you talk to, modern-day psychologists, psychiatrists, they'll tell us that, 90, 95%, perhaps as much as 98% of our so-called thoughts are unconscious, which means we've done a lot in our generational patterns, the way we were raised, the way we were brought up. We've done a lot of hiding from ourselves. And coming out of hiding, bringing that stuff out, it might be something that happened to a 2-year-old, something really tragic that happened to a 2-year-old. But if I'm carrying that dynamic around inside of me and I'm not allowed to look at it, then it's going to run my mind. It's going to run my life. You've heard me talk about Carl Jung several times where he says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. And so the basic objective here is to make everything for each of us that is unconscious available on a conscious level. And the kind of impact, you may have heard us tell this story before or not, but last year or so we were over at Jeannie's son's, at our son's place. and we're having dinner, and they were telling us that in their house, he and his wife kind of had a division of labor. He would do the dishes, and she would do the laundry. I was, well, that's interesting. Why is that? Well, because every time that Ryan goes to have anything to do with the laundry, he starts yawning and goes to sleep. He can't stay awake and do the laundry. He just can't do it. So we delve in a little deeper, and his wife says, and there's another kind of strange thing. Whenever I go to do the laundry, Ryan always goes over to check the dryer to see whether or not the cat is in it. And Ryan replied, well, doesn't everybody do that? Doesn't everybody check the dryer to make sure the cat isn't in it? Well, Jeanie had the recall. Jeanie, do you want to share the rest of that story? Because it's hilarious, but it's such a powerful demonstration of a principle.
Yeah, before he started preschool, the lady who ran a daycare, and she was doing laundry, and one day when she went to get the laundry out of the dryer, realized the cat had gotten in the dryer, and of course it killed the cat. And all of the kids were just traumatized because that was the daycare cat. And Ryan said he couldn't remember that. He didn't remember that happening. And I said, well, it was very traumatic. And so we kind of processed through that memory of him as a child and the tragedy of the cat getting killed in the dryer. And once he was able to process through that, then, he was able to do laundry. But until then, it was like it totally ran him. And he said the other night, we actually were talking about it, it had come up, and he said he still checks the dryer to make sure the cat's not in it. But it was just something, and he didn't even remember the event happening, but it was enough of an impact that even, here he is 35 years later or 30 years later, and still it's running his behavior.
And, when unconsciousness starts to surface, oftentimes we'll go into exactly what Ryan would do, and that was if he were the one doing the laundry before he became conscious of this, he'd literally start to yawn and just have to go to sleep. He'd get so tired. It was totally unconscious until the day we talked about that. So the objective of this work is, first and foremost, to totally and completely honor truth. And I'm not ever honoring truth when I say, they made me mad, they made me sad, they made me afraid. When I shift my language to, when they do this, my anger comes up, my fear comes up, my sadness comes up. Now I'm a big step closer to becoming acquainted with my own unconscious dynamics, which are generally generational dynamics as well.
Okay,
does that make sense?
So that's, because just the issue that I'm dealing with is actually with my younger brother, and we work together. I actually work for him, and
it's a little bit hard for me to hear you. Can you get closer to your microphone on your phone?
How's this?
It's still a little bit distorted, but...
You know what? Let me, I'm on earpods. Let me just get on the actual phone. Give me 1 second. Hello? Hello?
Okay.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
2,000% better.
Okay, great.
It was like
Sorry
you were
about
talking from underwater before.
Yeah, sometimes those wireless things. But so that definitely tracks. I mean, like I said, this is my younger brother. I definitely had stuff growing up that I definitely had feelings about.
Right.
And things. But I guess a lot of what I'm trying to, when this sensation keeps occurring, and I keep having now some different feelings.
Your voice is really cutting in and out a lot.
Really?
It's hard to keep track of what you're saying.
You know, maybe I can go outside. I'm not sure what to do about this. Okay. Let's see. Is this any better right now?
That sounds better. Yes.
Okay, I'm outside. Might be reception. Okay. Anyway, so basically this particular situation that keeps occurring at work that it's bringing up feelings in me. As I have done worksheets, like beginning, maybe 6 to 8 months ago through to now,
right,
nearly daily sometimes after work, my feelings about it change and have gone from bonding to the anger that I feel is coming at me in anger, then to kind of, I was able to maintain calmness and kind of patting myself on the back, but then I noticed when I did a worksheet later that day that I was actually taking joy in pointing out, making fun of him in a way. You know what I mean? Like I stayed calm, but it
was still the underlying hostility.
It really was. I was proving him wrong in front of everybody else, and, people were laughing and this sort of thing, and it stopped him from yelling, but it's not better behavior that I want to exhibit. So then, I started working on that, and now this occurrence occurred again yesterday in the same situation, and I was just kind of like, I had the thoughts in my head that I wanted to say that may or may not, just questions that may or may not have been attacky, which is kind of part of what I was writing to you to ask if they might have been or not. Because then now at this point, I don't even know anymore. And I didn't say what I wanted to, I didn't ask what I wanted to ask to kind of point out what I thought was going on. Because I thought maybe the questions would be helpful to him because it just seemed like a bad situation. But then I thought it wouldn't be helpful to keep the peace for the day in the workplace. So I kept my mouth shut. But that felt like when I made fun of him, my ego just went really large, and I felt I was like patting myself on the back. Oh, you stayed breathing and la la la, and whatever.
Right.
And I got large. When I didn't say anything yesterday, when I just stayed quiet and I had these questions in my head, that I wanted to ask from my heart, I was like, I felt small. I felt like I made myself smaller. And that just didn't feel good to me either, as far as an ideal way to be. And I just, now I'm trying to figure out, am I, every time I think, he's being a certain way, is that always me being wrong? Or is it if I'm like sometimes the reaction, the first time, because it happens a couple times a day that he corrects my opinion and tells me, I don't know enough about humanity and the world and I'm naive and whatever. The first time this happens, I am calm and I feel genuinely, I love my brother. He's a great boss. And outside of work, we get along wonderfully. We don't have these problems. And we don't have them while we discuss work things. We have respect between us. He respects me as an employee. I respect him as a boss. And he's very good at that. This happens when me, him, and 2 other employees discuss anything to do with after a podcast or after a news story, some kind of current event, a situation in the world, a situation with people and their responses. We completely disagree. He believes people are genuinely evil below, and I, am learning things from you guys, and they are conflicting when I speak.
Right.
And it doesn't happen with the other people in the room. It only happens with him. But obviously that's still me, but then I'm just so confused.
Right. Cool. Well, confusion is a good place to be. It's a signal that there's healing going on if you're doing your work. The question I would ask at this point is, if you think back to your early life in relationship to your brother, how did it look like your life when he was around for you to play small?
I'm sorry, how did it look like for me to play small? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, you said that in certain circumstances, like when you're not asking those questions, you feel small.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that when you're able to get in his face, as I interpret it, then you felt big, you felt large.
Well, the thing that just came to my head right now is when we were young, he's not considerably, he's like 8 years younger than me. And so when I was like 12 or so, my mother was working and everybody was working. They were starting a business and it was the whole thing. So I had the kids, him and my little sister, a lot. And there was definitely a big occurrence. Like there was a boy thing in my family. And they would come home and he would have done something and I was trying to tell him not to do. And they kind of would just they wouldn't listen to me ever. They always would listen to him. And he was this tiny little child, but they would always just kind of dismiss me while simultaneously putting the responsibility of him on me. And that was always an issue, which is what ended up with me leaving at a very young age because I was like, watch your own kids was kind of how I felt about it.
Right.
But yeah, so I definitely felt silent when he was around and smaller, even though I was larger physically.
Right. So is your worksheet a worksheet where number 1C is being silenced?
I hadn't done that one yet. So, okay.
Okay. So from your language, from your regulatory speech at this moment, okay, and that probably ties right in, but I think the core of the worksheet, if you put in number 1C, his name, and being silenced. And one of the things that you said a moment or two ago was you're trying to figure this whole thing out. And my offering is that is the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind to try to figure it out. You will not ever figure it out. But if you apply forgiveness, you can forgive it. That is, you can remove the underlying energetic patterns of that dynamic. I mean, that's the sort of thing that, oftentimes runs in families. The boys are respected, the girls are put down. It's kind of like the whole culture is. And so, that may have been going on. The reason you can't figure it out is that may have been going on and impacting people in your bloodline for literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, literally. And so to try and figure out the dynamics of his mind and his life and your mind and your life and why there's this result, the why of it is kind of the booby prize. But if you do that particular worksheet, and if you go up into the top right corner of the worksheet, what is your emotion in that situation where you're feeling small?
What is Yeah, right now it's anger. I was kind of saying earlier that it was disappointment, and I was wondering if there was underlying anger. But right now, having you just say all that to me, I am definitely, if I am a small child, I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm really mad.
Okay, so put that mad up in the number 1B. And remember that mad, angry, is not an emotion. Anger is really an anesthetic. And probably that other dynamic is where the pain lies. But doing the worksheet where the anger is the cover will come first. That'll be the first step.
I mean, maybe it is disappointment then, because that's what I kind of felt like. I was disappointed in my parents for not listening. I'm disappointed in him today for not, for belittling my life experience as if it doesn't exist against whatever he thinks.
So that would be the thought in number 1D. And breathe. What's happening with your breath right now?
I held it for a sec.
There is none, right? Okay. And the reason for that is the way that we get to create this projection that something that's inside of me is coming from them is by shutting the breath down and not allowing direct access to that information, which means then the mind massages the information into a picture that looks like whoever I'm blaming at the moment. And there's where perception comes in. Perception follows the instructions you give it. And when you hold your breath and you go, and it's their fault, then the mind says, okay, so what you want me to do is fill your 9-bit space, your conscious awareness, with information that makes it look like he's the problem in our lives. And that's what denial does. When I undo denial and I start to collapse those projections, then by their collapse, I get to look at the next level of my own mind, the hidden part of my own mind. So if you look at number 1E, is there a punishment thought toward him? And it sounds like you came up with that earlier, is to get larger than him and be able to, as I understood it, was it put him down?
Kinda, yeah. Like just poke holes in what he's saying. I usually, it started with kind of saying things direct to him in statements, and then I kind of changed it to asking questions, which I thought was more thoughtful. But I don't know if I was using my questions to attack, if that makes any sense. Like yesterday when he
kind of sounds like maybe it border on sarcasm.
Yeah. Oh, I do that. I am a sarcastic, or I use comedy sometimes to, I guess, punish. Now that yeah.
So do you know what the word sarcasm means?
No, what?
Chasm is a cleft or an opening. Sarcasm means to tear flesh. And it's and I know this one very well personally, because that in my family system as a kid was the way you got accolades. If you could come up with the sharpest, most cutting comment the fastest, you were the winner.
Yes, my dad,
and that was
God, he totally put me on pedestals for being able to do that. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Right. And so sarcasm, when I came out of a family system as that, I had uncles that I dearly cherished, and individually they were very unique. And I mean, if they didn't have sarcasm, they'd have never had a word to say to each other. That's how, just it filled the space. When I started to do this work, and I was brought up with that, and that was cool. And when I really started to look at it, what I came to understand is that sarcasm is our culture's acceptable method of expressing otherwise unexpressible rage.
That feels true to me, just because the latest situation where I did use sarcasm in that moment, and the other people it created a scene where I seemed to be the sane person, and it kind of made him look like the insane person, and I went away feeling like I was healing and stuff. And then I got home and did another worksheet because I was still thinking about it and I was still going over it. So how was I healing? It didn't. So I said, okay, I have to do something here. And that's when I recognized, I was like, that was really crappy to do that. Yeah. It was not a place of love at all. It was a place of winning. And it was just it was a more interesting way to win without looking like screaming like a banshee.
Right. So a culturally acceptable way of expressing otherwise unexpressible rage. And what your mind interprets as winning is when I do to him exactly what I accuse him of doing to me.
Yeah, I noted that when because as I was writing it out, I was like, oh, I guess that's actually sort of what I think he's doing to me. Is I feel like he comes at me with the, oh, poor Colleen, she's so naive. She doesn't understand what people are really like, the world is really like, and I need to educate her, like almost in a charitable way. but again, it makes me feel like my
superior.
life experience is nothing to him. Like
So-
I didn't learn anything along the way.
Do you remember the definition of denial?
Oh, it makes me feel, damn it. Oh, so sorry. Oh, God. I didn't mean to swear.
It's okay. It's all about catching ourselves.
Trying to be respectful, but that shocked me, and you're right. Wow. I got little tears in my eyes, and stop breathing again. Okay, let's go back.
Yeah. So that's the place to consciously breathe. And, what you're doing is you're opening these layers that probably been going on in the family system, seeing as how you and your brother do this so well together. It's probably going on for a long, long time. And the fact that Dad stands back and applauds you in doing it, he was probably the subject of it and the teacher of it as well. And the most tragic thing about it...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I said he would actually even reward me if I bested him sarcastically. Like, oh, you taught me, good job, type of thing,
Yeah. And recognize that the most tragic thing about that is, as step 7 in the worksheet says, you get the original. They, of the sarcasm, of the tearing flesh, they get a carbon copy. But we've become so good at our denial that we can hide the pain we inflict upon ourselves, and that pocket of pain that we've inflicted upon ourselves is what we call upon to build our brain's image of someone else that we're going to blame. And we really do believe that construct of our mind that it's all their fault. So my offering would be there are probably going to be some very tender moments between you and your brother. And what I'd suggest, aside from the forgiveness process, is that you get out the communication worksheet, the responsibility communication. And it sounds like with the fact that you and your brother do have an aspect of your relationship that's more respectful with each other, that the responsibility communication tool would probably be extremely helpful in both of you being able to look at and process through some of this family dynamic that probably both of you, when you go back, there are many people that I've run into over the years that, beat their kids around and, are kind of brutal with people. And the response when I call them on it is usually, well, they did that to me when I was a kid and I turned out okay. Never hurt me. The truth is, beating people around is never okay. And if any one of us were able to go back to the first moment where, as this tender being called love came into the world, if we were to go back to the moment where that person first turned the energy of anger, hostility, rage at us, the hurt and the pain of that moment would be virtually unbearable in our conscious adult lives. And we've adapted, and after generations and generations of adapting, we've hidden that all away, and we pretend that everything's okay. And the truth is, it's not okay. It was never okay for your father to tear your flesh or your son's or the next door neighbor's, and it was never okay for you to do it or for your brother to do it to you. And so there are going to be some really tender places that are going to need to be opened for real healing to occur. And I suspect that with the responsibility communication tool, that you might find that your brother, with what you said about him, will become a very willing partner when he becomes conscious of and realizes what's going on.
It's funny. I think you're right. And then at the same time, as you're bringing that up using that tool, my first thought is fear that he will, think that it's my touchy-feely stuff that I'm into that he thinks is woo-woo. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I get a lot of that. And I get a lot of that for everybody, but honestly, most people are pretty respectful to me in saying just believe what you believe. And that's, whatever it is.
Right.
He's the one who kind of tries to educate me because I'm, I don't know. And I think that's why it brings up so much. I think.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not 100% on my perception because I have all these feelings.
Right. Well, the core of the responsibility communication tool hinges on owning rather than projecting what's going on for me. And so it lays out a circumstance. You can pick one of those circumstances where this dynamic we're talking about has occurred, and you lay it out and you move away from living the game of blame into responsibility. So it might look like, an example might look like, gee, Bill, yesterday we were talking there in the office and I expressed an opinion and you said, and you could quote the words, well, Colleen, you just don't know any better. Let me tell you what's really going on. So just use that as an example if we were doing responsibility communication. And then the next step is, and I have an issue that I'd like your support in healing. And what came up for me was that I was feeling really shattered and destroyed by what you said. And are you breathing?
Yeah.
What's happening?
That just hit me somehow when you just said that. It just, I have tears and my chest is tight and my eyes are clenched tight shut and
so let everything soften.
Yeah.
Let your face soften, let your eyes soften. Pay attention to your chest and let it soften. And it's safe to feel those things. And the beauty of being able to feel them is when there's love present, they'll dissolve. Whereas what we believed, if I ever allowed myself to feel this, I would never get free of it. And so being able to, instead of, the standard, in the scenario you've laid out, the standard response would be when all this sadness and grief is up, is I get my tearing flesh voice out and I rip him a new one. And now I don't have to feel what's real inside of me. I don't have to deal with it. Because I can develop a whole perceptual construct that makes it all his fault and pretend there's none of this in me. And as long as I walk around pretending there's none of this in me, I have to find some way to anesthetize it. Hostility is one of the most powerful drugs on the planet. And so at that moment, owning that rather than blaming him for that, the objective of the responsibility communication is to say that with a voice of, and this is what came up for me, and this is mine, and what I'm really wanting, as opposed to you should stop being a horse's ass. What I really want is support in healing this grief and pain that I've been carrying around. I realize now, since we were kids, like I want to get free of this. Like I've had enough impact from it. It's destroying my life.
Yeah, I can actually see that if I were to say it like that, I could not imagine him laughing at me or dismissing me.
Right.
Honestly.
Exactly.
Because he does love me. I know he loves me. And I love him. I'm using the language. I know. It's just what I was brought up with.
I got it. That's cool.
Have cherishment for, I don't know. But yeah.
I know that you care for each other.
Yeah,
and there's some old family dynamics that you and he have played out that have been totally unnecessary, and you can both leave those behind once you work through this with him. His life will improve immeasurably, and so will yours. Because, all of this is just surface. That's been going on 24/7, 365 for how many decades in your life? And totally oblivious to it. Totally hidden. That's called the unconscious. And that's where Carl Jung said, that stuff, until it becomes conscious, will run our lives, and we'll call it fate. And what does fate look like? Well, look at what he's doing to me again. But I'm the one who's doing it to me. And over the years, that responsibility communication tool has been one of, when two people will approach it sincerely, it has been one of the most powerful tools I've ever seen for opening those deeper levels of healing. But when I use projection communication, that same scenario, projection. Yesterday when we had that little, tiff between us, you really acted like a horse's ass, and I've had enough of your big mouth, and it's time for it to change. Well, guess what's coming back at you? That's the core of his issue with you. When you were the big sister, and, that's probably exactly what is the root of his rage and pain. And so as you become vulnerable enough and willing and responsible enough, one of the first things that happens the minute that we go into just the voice tone of blame, just giving someone the look, just holding the breath the way Dad used to hold his breath before he got his belt out, can be enough to lock somebody into that kind of trauma. And when you
just
really
gave me a vision of my dad snapping his belt. He did a snappy thing in the hallway that he'd do when he wanted us to listen. He didn't ever hit us with it, but he did the snap thing all the time.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes the fear can be more of an assault to the being than even physical violence. Living with the sword of Damocles over your head is a hell of a way to live.
With the sword of Damocles? Is that what you said?
Well, there's a Greek story about the sword of Damocles, and Damocles was someone who, there was always this threat of the sword of being killed. So, and that's just a metaphor for, living in a realm where there's always a threat just right there to keep you in tow.
I feel like
and
that
it's
was
a way
the
that
motivation in my house.
Yeah, well, that's the way a lot of family systems negotiate, and they call it surviving.
Yeah.
That's the way a lot of family systems function. And it becomes the power struggle, who's got the biggest sword and who knows how to wield it. In this situation, he wields it. In this situation, she wields it, and they wield it. And the kids learn how to do it, and it becomes the good old family feeling. Somebody goes off and gets into a relationship where that doesn't exist, and there's something wrong with our relationship. Because I'm supposed to be able to wield my sword, and you're supposed to know how to wield yours so that we can keep this power struggle going. It's the way families work. If one holds those structures in their minds, they are never going to be happy until they get a family system set up that does that. And happiness is nothing more than I've got a goal, and I achieve that goal. And when I achieve that goal, I get a hit of dopamine, and I go, success. Even if the goal is something extremely destructive and negative, there's still happiness behind it. Even if it's something that I hate, but I achieve it, I still get this hit of dopamine, which has been called happy powder. And people become addicted to the negative because it makes them, quote unquote, happy. They get this hit of dopamine, and they think that is some sort of delight or something. And all it is a chemical. It's literally a chemical high.
It's funny that you say it like that, too, because that's a lot of what prompted me really looking at things, because I had an addiction issue, and thank God I worked through it, and every day I work through it, but it's been 10 years I've been okay. But in that moment, when I was able to get people to look at me making fun of him, and when I was able to gain that approval of the room and
I was the hero.
simultaneously shut him down, I was high. I was a little high.
Yep. That's the addiction to hostility and control.
And I just, when I looked back on the way that it felt, it was very much like my addictions in the past.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. Internally produced chemicals that produce that addiction. That's all hostility is. People think of it as an emotion. It's not an emotion. It's literally induced anesthetic. And always under the inclination to use hostility in any of its forms, there's a pain that's right beneath it. The objective here, as with any other addiction, is when I let go of the addiction, I need to let myself get in touch with the truth, which means I need to go to the pain. I need to embrace the pain. I need to develop the ability to hold the space of love through this pain so that the pain dissolves. And from what you're describing, you're talking about something that's probably been going on for many, many, many generations in your bloodline.
Yeah.
So congratulations on being willing to face it. That's like, that literally is life-changing. I think about
holy crap.
I think about people that I've worked with over the years. I mean, literally people who were beaten, mauled, abused sexually, emotionally, parents in prison, and I mean, just total horrific lives of trauma, who started to do this work and started to face that kind of stuff in them, and literally in one generation turned it around to what they have with their children and in their family system is just sweetness and blessing. I mean, that's the turnaround that happens when people choose to do their work rather than just go with what is familiar, the good old family feeling. So breathing with you.
Wow, I'm going to have to listen to this a couple more times. This has been really helpful, so, oh my God. I have a lot to do.
So let's complete the layup to the responsibility communication. So once I've owned, and I do this in total ownership, what came up for me is this, rather than what you did to me is this, rather than what you made me feel is this. It's like when I'm in responsibility communication, I'm using words that reflect to anyone who's listening my knowledge that what I'm experiencing belongs to me rather than being caused by you. All of a sudden, most people are safe, and it tends to call on, kind of to coin a current phrase, calls on our better angels, calls on the part of us that is truly human and wants to care and wants to support and is able to see past our own pain to be the space for that healing. That's what this set of steps results in with people. So once you've identified in using language that really reflects totally 1,000%, this is all about me. What I'm looking for is I'm realizing that I need to heal this, and do you have any ideas? And you ask it sincerely, knowing that the person who's standing in front of you is the person that has the antidote to your pain, even though in your perceptual mind and your projection, you believe that they're the cause of your pain. There's a principle in nature. Like, for instance, if you go out in the woods and you get into poison ivy, cancel the thought, within very few feet of that poison ivy is the antidote for poison ivy. Anywhere in the world you go, wherever there's a poison, there's an antidote for it. It's just the way the creation is set up. And the person who can resonate or show you your deepest pain, The person you draw in who can show you your deepest pain, if you'll take 100% responsibility for it, is probably the person who's carrying the antidote to your pain. But if you use one scintilla of the energy of blame, they're going to be in their defensiveness, and it's going to be back to war. So in really sincere understanding of that principle, my next question is, do you have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts about what I could do with this? And then you listen knowing that they have the answer, rather than listening out of the old brain cells go, well, okay, I'm doing this bullshit, but the truth is I know it's all their fault, and they're probably just going to sock it to me again. Well, if one holds to that kind of thinking, then yes, they're right. That's what will happen. But moving into the space of really being receptive to what they have to say and sincerely listening. If you've been responsible, this is the most profound way over the years that I've observed people being able to elicit a response from someone that is from being and that is compassionate and offers a space of support. So you ask that question and then you listen. You really listen with, okay, I'm really ready to hear what you might have to offer me. And then once they've made that offer and you've received it and you accept, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to do that. I'm going to work with that. Then the next step in the responsibility communication tool is, and here's something that I would think would help. Now, this whole section of the process is one where you've got to be careful that you're moving or asking for support in healing rather than problem solving. Most people have no interest whatsoever in healing because they have no comprehension what healing means. What they're interested in is problem solving. Well, you know, yesterday you made me look bad. Everybody's looking, and, you know, I felt kind of bad. And so in the future, what I'd like to do is just figure out a way to solve that problem. Well, okay, so if we're going to do something like that, well, we'll just speak about those things in private. Well, that could be, you know, a good problem-solving method, but it won't produce healing. So I want to do the healing work. And then once I've done the healing work, then if problem solving is necessary, sometimes will be, then great, go into problem solving. But always leave the problem solving to the very last step. Do the healing work and stay on track with the healing work. I don't know for sure whether we've got, Jeanie, do you know, do we have any of the audio tracks with the responsibility communication on I don't think we do, on our YouTube channel. There is a workshop called Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? In our catalog, which you can purchase a streaming copy of or a physical copy of. Also, it's part and parcel. And with the work you've been sharing, you know, the times you've called in, Colleen, over the last 6 or 8 months, it might be time to step in and do the self-study, Codependence to Interdependence Communication Practicum. And that's a 90-hour video set, 89 hours actually, that includes personal code evaluation. You know, that I would say it would very possibly, if that's in your means, very possibly would be a powerful next step for you to do that self-study intensive.
It isn't in my means at this second, but I can make it become that in the next few months, probably.
Okay.
Tops.
Cool.
Yeah, I can
and if
put
it's something that,
together, but yeah. My means have been stretched recently with the classes I'm taking and stuff, which honestly,
Understood.
I'm going to be starting in a minute, so I'm a little distracted now all of a sudden, but I would,
okay.
I appreciate, and I'm gonna definitely work on that and look over everything that you said and re-listen to this. And if you're available, I would love to continue on Monday because I will be at work and on lunch while I'm taking the hour off talk to you if you're available. And
We'll be here. We'll be here. That's
perhaps
the plan.
we can do a worksheet and go
Yep.
over, or another. I suppose we sort of did a little bit of one.
Sure.
But thank you so much.
Cool. All right. And if the codependence intensive is something that you think you might want to do, I'd be happy to work with you to break the cost down into whatever time frame. The cost for the whole 90 hours or 89 hours, including the personal code evaluation pre and post and ongoing support with the radio show, is $600. And if it's something you want to do, I'm happy to work with you with any kind of payment plan that you'd want to make it that would make it reasonable for you. So you make a proposal and we'll set it up if that's something you want to do. And otherwise, let's plan to get together Monday and I'll let you get back to work.
Looking forward to it, Michael. Thank you. Thank you,
All
Jeanie.
right. Delighted. Blessings.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
So we're down to just under 4 minutes, but we do have another hand up.
Well, let's say hello.
It's Audrey 520. You are on the air.
Welcome, dear heart. How are you, Audrey? Hello, Audrey. How are you? Audrey, I wonder if you're talking to us and your mute button's on. We're not hearing you if you are. So maybe see if you're mute challenged. And Audrey, if you're there and you can hear me, we still can't hear you, so maybe try hanging up and dialing back in again and hitting 1. Otherwise, I don't know what to do. We can't hear you.
Okay, she's disconnected, so we'll see if she calls right back in.
Okay. Probably something with the technology. In any event, while we're waiting for her to dial back in, if you want to get a copy of the communication worksheet, if you go into our website, whyagain.org, under Other Worksheets, and just look down the list, it's called Communication Rules. And that will give you the step-by-step for utilizing the responsibility communication tool. So if that one makes sense for you. And
you would first click Start Here, and then that takes you to where all the worksheets are, and then just scroll down to Other Worksheets.
Okay, so if everybody's got that, and or if you want to purchase the communication, did you hear what I think I said, workshop, we have a 4-hour audio track of it and a 2-hour video track of it, and they're in the catalog and under purchases. And you can purchase physical media. We've got CDs or DVDs. And or we have a streaming link that you can purchase, so we've got it permanently available. It's a powerful workshop. It's really a life changer. The difference between projection communication and, in that workshop I define projection communication is as I have a reality in my mind, and I'm going to speak like you're the cause of it. You're responsible for it. That's projection communication. Responsibility, and I mean, that's what the whole world does. I have this reality, and look at how you done it to me. Responsibility communication changes that, and I use language that reflects that I'm aware that this construct of my mind is mine, it's interior to me, and I'm the one who set it up. And when I start to own it, I get to start to look at the parts of it that I've hidden from myself, and I get to clean up my own mind and my suffering. So that's the communication. Did you hear what I think I said, workshop? And we're down to the last few seconds, so Audrey, I apologize. We missed you, but maybe we can talk on Monday too. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Have an awesome weekend and the best year yet of your